What if Earth had rings like Saturn? Imagine waking up, stepping outside, and looking up to see a breathtaking arc of glowing bands stretched across the sky. Wide, shimmering rings arching over the planet, visible both day and night, not just to astronauts or people with telescopes, but to everyone. Earth with rings like Saturn would be the most beautiful disaster we never asked for. To understand what would happen, we first need to picture just how big Saturn's rings really are. They're enormous, tens of thousands of kilometers wide, made of chunks of ice and rock ranging in size from dust grains to boulders. If Earth had a similar ring system, it would stretch far into the sky and dominate our view in a way the moon never could. Let's say the rings start around 6,000 kilometers above Earth and extend outward to about 120,000 kilometers, just like Saturn's. They wouldn't be a solid bridge across the sky. They're mostly empty space, particles flying in perfect orbit, forming a razor-thin but impossibly vast disk. If you were standing on the equator during the night, you would see something that looks like a shining glass rainbow stretching from horizon to horizon. During the day, sunlight would scatter off the icy particles and cast shadows and light patterns on the ground. Imagine sunsets where the rings glow golden above you while the sky darkens. Of course, where you are on Earth would change how you see the rings. People near the equator would see them head-on, like a glowing line slicing through the sky. But the farther north or south you go, the more you'd see their curve. In some places, they would rise high above the horizon in a towering arc, while in others, they might only peek out at an angle, like the edge of a coin glinting in the sunlight. And it wouldn't just be beautiful, it would change everything. Let's start with light. The rings would reflect sunlight both during the day and at night. Full moons? Forget them. Even at midnight, the rings would flood the sky with soft, reflected light, so bright you could read a book outdoors. Ancient humans would have built religions around them. Mythologies filled with stories of glowing serpents, giant halos, celestial stairways. There would be no such thing as a dark night. That could mean no stars, no ancient navigation by starlight, no Milky Way gazing. Humanity's relationship with the cosmos would be shaped differently from the very beginning. But the rings wouldn't just be a poetic sight, they'd be a logistical nightmare. Satellites? Say goodbye. Our current satellites, like GPS, communication networks, and space telescopes, orbit in the very zone where rings would exist. Any satellite trying to pass through the rings would be shredded by ice and rock particles. That means we'd need completely new technology, or different satellite orbits just to keep your phone working. Launching rockets would become like trying to fly a drone through a snowstorm made of bullets. You'd need to thread a needle through the gaps in the rings to avoid disaster. And speaking of disasters, those rings wouldn't last forever. They're unstable. Earth's gravity, the moon, and even the sun would constantly tug on them, warping their shape and pulling them out of alignment. Over thousands or millions of years, bits of the rings would start raining down. At first, just a gentle meteor shower here and there. But if a large enough piece fell out of orbit, that's not a shooting star. That's a sky full of flaming space rocks. Also, remember tides? The moon causes tides by pulling on Earth's oceans. Add a giant ring system made of billions of tons of material orbiting overhead, and things get messy. The gravitational pull from the rings might stretch the oceans in different directions, depending on where they are in the sky. Cities that are safe from tsunamis today could be under threat, depending on how the ring's gravity interacts with Earth's water. And here's something wild. Earth's climate would change. The rings would cast shadows, not just pretty ones, but real ones, permanent ones. Depending on the time of year and location, entire regions could experience partial shade for days or weeks. That means lower temperatures, changes in plant growth, even shifts in wind and weather patterns. Crops might need to be grown in new places. Animals might migrate differently. Rain might fall where it never used to. And if you're thinking about solar panels, oops, the rings would reflect and block sunlight, disrupting solar power generation depending on your position. That means energy systems would need to be adapted to the new reality of a sky that isn't just blue or cloudy, but glowing, glittering, and occasionally in the way. But it wouldn't all be bad. Some clever engineers would probably figure out how to harvest ring material, maybe using it for space construction or fuel. Artists would paint the rings endlessly. Entire industries would spring up around ring tourism. People would spend fortunes to visit observatories built at just the right angle to see the most glorious view. And can you imagine the cultural impact? Flags, logos, monuments, all featuring the great celestial bands above. Of course, this is all just a fantasy. If Earth ever did have rings, they'd likely have to form from a catastrophic event, like the moon being shattered by a giant impact. And let's be clear, if the moon were destroyed, we'd have bigger problems than pretty skies. But still, imagining Earth with rings lets us appreciate just how special our planet already is. Quiet nights, starry skies, a single moon, and a fragile balance that allows us to ask impossible questions just for the joy of imagining the answers. So next time you look up, try to picture it. Giant icy rings glowing across the heavens, painting the sky with shimmering arc. It's beautiful. It's terrifying. It's completely ridiculous. But isn't it fun to dream?